Welcome to People Love Process. In this movie, I want to kind of demystify an effect you might have seen in one of those 15-second reels on Instagram, or maybe it's TikTok, and kind of show you how you can create it. A lot of people kind of get tripped up by those reel hypers where they throw stuff out and you're going, what? And you watch it like 15 times and you're going, I don't get how they did it because it goes too fast. So I'm going to slow it down and show you how to create an effect, apply it, save it as a resource, and leverage it to create a unique aesthetic. This is going to be a very practical and fun process. So let's just jump right into it. I first want to address tangents. There's certain things in vector format that are just really hard to build. In Illustrator, there isn't always an easy way to do that. Let's say you had these two red elliptical shapes and you wanted to create a bridge between them, but make it look kind of organic. Well, you might go ahead, let's go ahead and create a stroke color here. We'll go to the pen tool. And if you have Smart Guides turned on, it'll tell you when you're over a path or when you're over an anchor. I always toggle those on and off as needed. And you'd want to find kind of that perfect tangent. Now, within geometry, tangent is a good example of a tangent would be the anchor point at the top, the side, and the bottom, and the other corresponding side of elliptical shape. Those are perfect tangents. Now, to find the perfect tangent where you want to connect this to this one, you're going to be eyeballing it. But you might go ahead and draw it like this with the pen tool. Then you could go to the anchor point tool, grab the path, and you could start distorting it. So you get kind of that shape you're going for, and that would kind of fulfill the top. But then you'd have to go down on the bottom and do it there as well. So you'd find a tangent here, or maybe you want it to be the exact same. You could just go ahead and clone this. Let's go to the reflect tool, find a central anchor point here, and you could reflect it over. Then you could select these two, and we'll just close this shape here like this. Oops. Close this shape like that, and then you could just color it like this and you get this. But this looks a little wonky right here. So if we zoom in on that, you can see it's not perfect. It doesn't go smooth transition into that curve. So these are tangents that are difficult tangents to build in Illustrator. Now, that said, there is a script that will do just this. And the reason why I named this red will become apparent when we go ahead and select this and go to the scripts, because the script name for this one is Meatball. Love the name, and it's just easier to show you what it does. So I'll click on that. It'll bring up this interface. We can turn on preview, and it will figure out where those perfect tangents are to create something like this. So if we go ahead and click OK, you can see it's created that same shape we tried to eyeball. And this looks great. And if this is what you're trying to do, you could use this script. Now, the only drawback I found on this script is if you select these two here, and let's go ahead and go to the Pathfinder palette down here, and I'm going to go Unite. Well, before we go Unite, let's go to this palette. This is Stoop plugin. It shows how many anchor points do we have selected. We have 12. Well, as soon as we unite those shape with Pathfinder, notice we have 2 additional anchor points. That means there's redundant anchor points in this design, even though if I pull this Pathfinder window out, even though if you go to Pathfinder options, I have remove redundant points turned on, you're still going to get it. That only basically removes them off of 90-degree angles, straight lines, that said, not curves, and not in this context. So I just wanted to point that out. So if we go ahead and select this, I'm guessing it's going to be, yep, there's one right here, and it's either over here, yeah, and it's on that one as well. So Those are redundant anchor points. And if you offset the shape, you would run into issues because of those being added. And that's not an easy thing to resolve. Sometimes it can be. Most often, it's just a pain. So is the script perfect? No, it's not perfect. What if you want to do that type of action, but you have 3 different elliptical shapes like this? Well, let's see what it does. Let's go ahead and go back to scripts, go back to Meatball. I use red for Meatball since it was called Meatball, but these are just blue. So we're going to go preview. You can see what that looks like, and we can increase this to kind of minimize it like that. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe drop back a little bit. So this is a little beefier. And click OK, and it will select these shapes, and it will do that between these shapes. Now, is this perfect? No, you're going to run in that same redundant point problem. But not only that, let's say I wanted this one like further over here. Well, you'd want to redo all of them. So you just select these and rerun the script to get that. So it's not ideal. It doesn't solve all the problems. And I want to show you how you can bake this kind of aesthetic yourself. It's not hard. You just have to use a specific methodology. But once you do it once, you can save it as a resource and use it again. So let's go ahead and dive into that. And I call this effect shape cohesion. So if we have all of these shapes here, I can select these like this. And then I want to go to the Pathfinder palette, and I want to unite these, but I want to hold the Option key down. So I'm going to hold Option down and click Unite. And now if we go to the Appearance panel, this will say Compound Shape. You don't want it to be a compound path. That's what throws a lot of people off, is they'll just hit create a compound path because those videos go by so fast. It's actually a compound shape. There's a difference between a compound path, compound shape. You want a compound shape, and then it will work. So we've created this as a compound shape, as denoted in the Appearance panel. Now all we're going to do is through the Appearance panel, let's go ahead and pull that out here. We can collapse this, is we're going to apply an effect to our fill layer here. So we'll go to Effect, we're going to go to Path, and we're going to go to Offset, and we're going to apply an offset effect to this. So I'll go ahead and select that. It'll bring up this window where we're going to pick how much we want it to offset. In this case, we'll do 22. And you can toggle on and off preview to see what that's looking like. But here's the key. In where it says joins, you don't want to do miter. You want to do round. So we're going to do round, and that's fine. So we'll click OK. Now, with that same fill layer selected, if I go ahead and collapse this, you can see we have that first effect applied. We're actually going to apply another effect to that same fill color. So we'll go click on Effects. We're going to go to Path. We're going to do Offset again. And it's going to give you this warning. It's going to say, you do realize you're applying 2 effects. Yes, don't show me it again. I can do this. Apply new effect. And then it'll ask you what you want that to be. We're going to use the same amount we did the first time, but we're going to do it in a negative. So we're going to go negative 22 like that. And then we're going to go to round like this. And notice what it's doing over here. And we're going to go OK. And so what we've done is we've created that exact same aesthetic, but this is completely customizable, and it's going to adjust wherever you move this. So if you direct select an object and you pull it out like this, you can see how it's just automatically adjusting. You can pull it over to this side. Maybe you want this one to come up like this. And when you're doing this, if you pull it too far apart, it'll go bloop. And you actually have to make that sound when you do it, like bloop. There you go. Like this. And it's kind of a cool way, and it gives you more flexibility than the script because you can obviously move things around and fuse them together. And this is how this effect works. Now, what you want to do though, once you've created this effect, go ahead and select the shape we have with the effects applied to it, and we'll go to the graphic styles panel, and with it selected, we'll click the plus button and it'll add this graphic style to it. So we want to double click into this graphic style, and I'm just going to name it Cohesion, like this. And now we have this saved as a resource we can use later. So let's turn on this layer. Here's a design we have here, like this. First thing I'm going to do is just select these. I'm going to clone them, Command-C, Command-F. I'm going to use the Reflect tool, and we'll snap at the top anchor. I'll reflect it over here. Then I'll snap it on the side anchor and reflect it down here. What we're going to do is kind of make an S shape, but use that cohesion effect to pull it off. So all of these objects we have selected, we're going to hold Option down and we're going to click Unite. That's going to create our compound shape as shown in the appearance panel over here. And all we have to do now, we don't have to apply effects. We've saved it as a graphic style. So with this selected now, I can just click the graphic style and it applies that effect to our graphic. Now, if you tried to create, once again, these manually in between, it'd be an exercise in futility to pull it off and to do it really well, to look nice and elegant. Now, there's times when I create stuff in Illustrator and it's an effect, and then when I expand it, I'm like, it added way too many anchor points. And I was afraid that's what was going to happen here. But you wouldn't want to use this as your final art because it still has a live effect as shown here in the appearance panel for this fill color on this object. So you wouldn't want to send a live effect as part of a final asset if this is for a client, for example. You would want to go to Object and you'd want to go to Expand Appearance and look at how nice it expands it. I was like kind of surprised when I saw how clean it did it. That's not always the case in Illustrator. So now we don't have all those independent shapes. If I go to Keyline View, you can see it's just this one fill shape like that. So that's pretty cool that it expands pretty clean and it works pretty well in that type of context. We'll go ahead and put Pathfinder over here. So what could you possibly use this for? Well, maybe it's like a artificial intelligence company called Sync AI, and this is the brand mark. How you use it can be whatever you think would be a great kind of style that goes with whatever your client or project needs are. So how you use it is going to be dependent upon what you need to create at any given time. Now, I was looking at this because, you know, there's things that Illustrator team has added to Illustrator that I'm just going, that's interesting, but how often am I ever going to use that? And one of those things are 3D modeling. And they made a big hype about the inflate feature. And so I was thinking about this. I'm going, well, this is kind of a cool shape. That might look good in 3D. So let's go ahead and check out what we can do with this shape, this just flat vector art, and kind of push it to a 3D environment. So we're going to go to Window. We'll open up 3D and Materials here. And the first thing we want to do, we're going to use the inflate feature. So I'm just going to click that on, and you can see it applies this kind of rendering to it. But one thing, I don't like this kind of rendering. This almost looks like a matte finish kind of textured plastic surface. I want it to be like a hard shell, kind of smooth, elegantly lit. And to do that, you'll want to go up to this top right menu here. This is the render with ray tracing. You want to click that because the difference between what you see now and what it will render as is just going to look a lot better. Now, I think that looks a lot better. Now, if I go down here, you can check the lighting or edit the lighting like here. Like maybe you think the intensity shouldn't be like around 70%, so you might pull it back to like 50. And then every time it does ray tracing, the reason they don't have ray tracing turned on by default is because it has to redraw that every time you adjust something. So you can go with 50. I kind of liked it a little more vibrant, so I'll put it back at 70. And the one thing about inflate is it's assuming that is that you only want half of the object inflated. So if we go to the y coordinate and I go like this, you can see this has just done half of that. So the bottom half is flat and the rest of it is just the inflated part of it. Well, these are kind of orbs of sorts that we have here in the logo. So I want it to do all of it. And by the way, I always use the manual rotate by punching in numbers rather than using this, which you can to rotate it, but I kind of prefer this because I can go back to my original orientation really quickly. So we want both sides to be inflated. So what I'm going to go up here is I'm going to get rid of this depth because it's adding depth, so it punches out on one side a little higher, but that means it's a little flat on the edge. So I'm going to pull this all the way down. Oops, let's make sure that the 3D, there we go. I just want to get rid of that depth, so we'll get rid of that. Then the next thing I want to do is here it says inflate both sides, so I'm going to turn that on. And it's going to have to render it once again. And these are all things you can do if you don't want ray tracing on as you're doing it. You don't need to do that. But the next thing I want to do is I think the positioning's okay straight on. That's how I designed the brand mark. But I think kind of angling it in somewhat of a perspective might look kind of cool. So let's go to the y coordinates. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. Maybe it's turning a little bit like this. And I kind of want it to fall backwards a bit. So we'll go to the x coordinate. And maybe we go something like 4. Something like that. Just so it's not perfect. And then on the z coordinate, let's go ahead and adjust that one. Maybe it's right about there. That way it's not a perfect 90-degree angle. You can see how it's still showcasing the vector object that this effect is being applied to, because that's all it is. If you go to the appearance panel on this as well, you can see it's just a 3D and materials effect applied to that vector object. Now, if you want to get access to the final image, you have to expand it. So let's go ahead and go to Object, and we'll go Expand Appearance. And look how nice this looks on the edge even, and it retained that 3D aspect. Here we could go, maybe we add a drop shadow. Let's go Effects, Styles, Drop Shadow. Bring this up, and we'll just create a nice drop shadow here. I don't think I want 75, I think 60. I don't want any coordinates going out there, so I'm going to put 0. I want to be offset a little bit. Maybe we add 10 to that, and I want to blur it a little more. We'll go 7, like that. And I think that looks pretty good. So that's how I would take this cohesive shape I created, project it out in 3D modeling, and to create a brand asset like this as well. Now, is this a graphic aesthetic that you're going to use a lot? Probably not. But it's a fun one to know nonetheless when you do need to build difficult tangents like this. And the only way to do it precisely in vector form requires a custom script someone created outside of Illustrator. And that said, that script's not even that perfect. So baking it yourself using an effect is going to make the process work really precisely, and you'll be able to guarantee the quality of the end product you create. Now, remember, I've included the Meatball script that I demonstrated in the exercise files. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well when you're doing a simplified type approach. Just watch out for those redundant anchor points. That is something like, that's another thing AI should be able to resolve. Astute has made a plugin where you can smart remove anchor points. So why can't they make AI built into Illustrator so it goes, that's a redundant anchor point. We'll smart remove it for you. That would actually be helpful and nice, and a feature I would welcome because I'm always having to deal with that at times, especially when I do shape building type designs. Thank you for those who have become members of the People Loves Process channel. I really appreciate it. Your support continues to help me invest my time to create helpful new content for you. I appreciate your likes. Sharing a link to one of my movies is always appreciated, or just a simple comment, because it helps me to continue producing projects I can share with you. Until next time, thank you for watching People Love Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.